life can hit like a sledgehammer. But guess what? We hit back harder. Welcome to Affirm That Sh. Somehow I thrive. I'm Jennifer Rogers, your no BS guide to turning life's toughest moments into badass victories. Ready to flip the script? Let's affirm that life can be a bitch, but somehow we thrive. Welcome to today's episode of Affirm That Sh. I'm your host, Jennifer Rogers. Today we're going to hear from Jamie Hughes, a social psychologist who has climbed his way through his own depression and mental health battlefield and is here today to share his tips, secrets, and weapons on how you too can come through your own battlefield. But before we meet Jamie, let's hear his affirmations. If this is your first time joining us on Affirm That Sh, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. Right now, I'm going to ask you to settle into your space and place comfortably as you are, and let's repeat Jamie's affirmations. I am proof that breakthrough follows breakdown, and every battle I faced shaped me into the powerful guide I am today. I am proof that breakthrough follows breakdown, and every battle I faced shaped me into the powerful guide I am today. I am proof that breakthrough follows breakdown, and every battle I faced shaped me into the powerful guide I am today. As I continue to grow, I inspire others to believe that their healing is not only possible, it's powerful. As I continue to grow, I inspire others to believe that their healing is not only possible, it's powerful. As I continue to grow, I inspire others to believe that their healing is not only possible, it's powerful. My journey through depression has become my greatest teacher, guiding me to serve with wisdom and compassion. My journey through depression has become my greatest teacher, guiding me to serve with wisdom and compassion. My journey through depression has become my greatest teacher, guiding me to serve with wisdom and compassion. Stay with us. After this break, we'll meet Jamie.
Imagine a space where you let go, where the clamor of the world quiets and you meet your truest self. At Yu-Gi-Oh, through sound vibrations, Reiki, and the wisdom of tarot, we help you release what no longer serves you, align with your energy, and renew your spirit. Begin your journey back to yourself today.
Welcome, Jamie, to Affirm That Sh. Thank you for being our guest today.
Hi, Jennifer. Thank you very much for having me.
You are welcome. You know, when we were first talking before we started recording this session this morning, just learning about you, I told you I've kind of cyber stalked or cyber watched you for just a little bit. And I am so excited for the story that you're going to share, not only with me, but with our viewers and our listeners, because you are coming from a place of firsthand walk through that ship battlefield. And I cannot wait to see what golden nuggets, what pieces of information, and like we said in the affirmations and leading in, what weapons of destruction you have for us as we're walking through our mental health field today. So with that, I'm going to hand it right over to you to take us right into that storm.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, a storm, that's a nice analogy for some of the things I've been through in my life. And there are people watching this or listening that can probably relate. Maybe they're going through a storm right now. So just to kind of start from the beginning, my parents were divorced when I was still a baby. And so growing up at the youngest ages, I didn't even know I had a father. I I never saw him. There were no pictures, there were no names, there was no mention, nothing. So it was just me and my mom up until the age of 8 when she passed away from a liver disease. So that was kind of the early years and the trauma that really hit and never went away. When you lose a parent at that young of an age, especially if it's your only parent that you know, that's quite detrimental. Um, the family court ended up saying that I needed to go live with my father, whom I'd never seen or met, to my knowledge. And so I was thrown into the storm of a new home, a new town, a new school, a new family, everything. And from then on, it was an abusive situation growing up. So not only did I have that trauma of losing my mom, from the age of 9 up was psychological and emotional abuse, and began suffering with depression. So I had the grief that was untreated, unhealed, and that led into the depression, which also was untreated. My very first introduction to the mental health field was when I was 18 and I had a suicide attempt. That was the very first time I spoke with anybody, doctor, therapist, psychiatrist, anybody about the depression and the unhealed trauma, the abuse, things like that. So it absolutely, affected the rest of my life from that point. I have several memories in childhood of moments that stuck with me, that stuck in my brain, that affirmed the core belief, and this is very common with depression, that you're worthless, that you're unwanted, that you're unloved. That was the regular message I got growing up. Not the, oh, you're special, you're doing a good job, I'm proud of you. I didn't get those. I got the other. Um, and unfortunately, there's, people that get that as well. So it's very easy to understand, and you're not alone if you find yourself, with self-doubt, with, low self-worth and self-esteem growing up. Um, it it ended up shaping me, as your affirmation says, that it guided me into an interest in psychology. By the time I was in my mid 20s, I decided that I wanted to go to college and study psychology. And there's sort of a running joke in the academic field, anyways, about psychology, that anyone that goes into psychology is doing it to try to figure themselves out. And I had a professor that told me that early on, and I was like, he might have a point. And he definitely had a point. So it's definitely true. Um, at the same time, I really had a heart for helping people, was always very compassionate, always wanted to do things to lift others up, to lessen the pain, the circumstances they were going through, you know, and I don't know if it's just part of my personality. I don't know if it's because I'm a Cancer, which for Cancers, we got that natural empathy,
Yes,
or
you do. Yes, you do.
yeah,
I love it. And Jamie, if I may ask for
yeah,
just
yeah.
a moment, because that's quite a life up until the age 18 and
Hmm.
going through. And I love that you hit on the grief aspect of it,
Hmm.
because how did you going from never knowing your father, not even knowing about this person's existence basically until the death of your mother.
Hmm.
How were you able to identify from 9 to 18 how to grieve? What were those feelings? Because we're, as adults, it's hard enough for us to grieve. But I can't imagine a 9-year-old little boy having to navigate this loss and then a completely different lifestyle where now my love is abuse. That's what's shown to me.
Hmm. Yeah, I didn't have a method or a system or anything for dealing with the grief. It was just a constant sense of loss and lost. Um, you know, I what I had before was gone, and I had no idea or path or direction of where to go. And I didn't have anyone to give me that. You know, growing up, there were certain people in my life that I was able to find strength from. And I guess that's probably the biggest saving grace. My grandparents on my mother's side, I was always very close with them. They were very loving and supportive. I didn't get to see them much, not as much as I needed and wanted to, but when I did, that was always something very special. Even to this day, I contribute a lot of what I learned in terms of resilience to my grandfather and how to show compassion for others from my grandmother. So there were always these little lights from people that I was able to kind of latch onto and just keep going in a sense. It just, it just wasn't enough to overcome the grief and the depression, until much later.
And I agree with your professors. I have a degree in criminal justice, and it was the same reason I chose criminal justice because of my past. I want to figure out why these things happened.
Hmm.
So when that was said to you, and you're like, maybe they have a point, did that drive your studies even deeper where you could go into that self development and then take those learning lessons as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was so intrigued by it. And, we had, I think, had like intro to psychology in high school, which I took and, didn't pay attention, but there was probably enough there to kind of spark that interest. And so when I got started college and went into it, yeah, him saying that definitely made a difference and made it even more so interesting. And it was almost like every chapter, and every class just was kind of magnified in its effect and my desire to just absorb it. And I knew very early on that I wanted to apply it not just to myself, but to others, but I just didn't know how. And that kind of came later.
And as things come on later, how did your relationship with your father begin to shift and change?
Um, so I never ever felt connected to him, not as like a father. I knew he was my father, and there was, oh God, there were so many years where I just absolutely even hated the thought that I was related to him. Like I would catch myself, years later, catch myself saying something or doing something that reminded me of him, and I just would have a knee-jerk reaction, just hated it. And that was that was part of the healing I needed was to get to a point where I didn't loathe myself for what I had from him, for that connection. It After I became an adult, out on my own, totally, starting to improve and do better, the relationship shifted to where I was no longer afraid of the emotional consequences. So, for instance, there was a time where I had uh, two children, and they were both still very young. And my son, we were over at my parents' house, my dad and my stepmom at their house, eating or something. I don't remember, but my son, who was probably like 2 or 3, maybe, knocked something off the counter. I don't remember specifically, but my dad jumped on him. Da, 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 and I just stood up very calmly and quietly and walked right over to his face and said, "If you ever yell at my son again, you will never see him for the rest of your life." And that was it. He never said another word to him. Harsh. So there was a change, as I grew, and it just took time and healing to get to that point. And he ended up, passing away a few years ago, and we were neutral. We were neutral by that point. But yeah, there was never a loving connection.
And I'm sure that you've had those dysfunctional connections with the dad, but you still have at your very core those loving connections from your mom. Do you
Mm.
see those come into play in your life?
Oh yeah, yeah. So one of the greatest things that I remember from my mom when she was alive was uh, how she always taught me stuff practically. Um, for instance, one of the ways she taught me to read was by buying me comic books. So here I was at 4 years old. I love the comic books. I love the superheroes, of course, like most kids. And so she would buy me a comic book and say, "Okay, we're going to learn to read it. You want to know what this story says, you're going to have to learn to read it." And so that was a great thing that I got from her, and always carried it with me, even through life, even with my kids. Like I mentioned, when they were little, it was very important for me to pass that pass the good things along, and teach them in those ways.
I love that. What a fun story and something, like you said, to carry on into your children. And it's so important that we understand those life experiences from 0 to 8 play an impact. And
Hmm.
I know that you specifically can talk about that. So, with your background and your knowledge in social psychology today, what are some things that those of us, listeners, viewers, even those of us in our everyday life, what are some suggestions that you have for us navigating our mental health obstacles or our depression episodes?
Um, a few suggestions. So one is acknowledgement, which can be the most difficult out of all the steps. Sometimes you just don't want to go there because you're afraid that acknowledging it means something even worse. Um, and I saw a quote, and it kind of ties to this. It said, having having some conversations are difficult, but imagine the difficulties from not having them. And this is true with mental health. If you aren't at a point of acknowledging it and taking that first step, it's just going to continue to cause problems. And it is a part of you. It's not the whole you. And there's kind of some balancing act to that. And I know there's some extremes one way or the other, in terms of, oh, well, you can't even identify with this. You can't even speak its name or else. No, you can't cure a problem if you don't know what it is. You can't deal with the situation if you don't identify it. Um, Identifying it helps you from that point to start building a path forward. Um, another I don't know if you'll call it a strategy or not, but another idea or suggestion is, remember that medical care and even therapy are pieces of the puzzle. They're not the whole thing, you know? They both are meant to help you gain strength while you work on yourself. The more you work on yourself, the less you will need those. Um, a easy example is when I first started therapy, like in my mid 20s, and that was the first time I intentionally dealt with, with my depression. But when I first started, I there were some therapists I couldn't speak to. And I thought at the time it was because they were men. I was like, oh, I'm identifying this with my father. So therefore I can't have a male therapist. It has to be a female therapist. Couple of years later, down the road, I realized that wasn't the problem. The problem was their communication style. The um, therapist that I didn't identify, that I couldn't listen to, just had a very direct style. And the ones I could work with and identify with had a softer, more compassionate style. So it was the directness that I couldn't handle. Now, fast forward, 10, 15 years later, and like if I were to go to therapy now, I could not deal with a super soft, super compassionate person. I need direct now, but that's only because I've grown and healed to a point to where I understand the process. I know what's going on. So yeah, there's, you have to, in dealing with a mental health issue and dealing with any kind of personal growth, you really have to become a student of yourself. Know who you are, know what you need to work with, know what you like and don't like, know what works and what doesn't work. Learn those things about yourself. These are all part of growth, and we all go through that. And we should all, no matter what you're facing, whether it's grief, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, you know, learn about yourself, because what works for you may not work for me. And the timing is going to be different on almost every case. Um, and that kind of leads to the other point of be compassionate with yourself. Don't think you have to be where I'm at today. Don't think that you have to get rid of this issue. Don't think that you have to be a different person. That's not the point of healing and growth. Healing and growth is learning to be the person that you really are. And as you build those strengths, as you build that self-confidence and that wholeness, that's when you can be effective at helping other people. Um, that's when you can really dive in and say, okay, I'm I've learned and grown and healed enough to where I can give back in this way, and this way, and make the difference that I want to make. And at that point that you're no longer hurting yourself. You're no longer putting more on yourself than you can handle. So those are just, a few suggestions.
I appreciate those. And there was, I believe it was your page again. I told you I was kind of cyber watching you from the background. I believe it was your page. I saw that don't wait for somebody who has depression to reach out and ask for help because they may not do it.
Yes.
You reach out and you ask.
Hmm.
One, did I see that on your page? I want to make
Yes.
sure I'm giving you
Yeah,
credit.
yeah.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Good,
Yeah.
good. And I love that you're putting that out there, especially when we talk about the workforce area
Hmm.
or sometimes even our closest friends. Because in the
Hmm.
workforce, you're spending more time with your coworkers than your own family.
Hmm.
And sometimes we notice that a coworker's behavior or state is off, but we don't always feel that comfort level to do that check-in because, like you said earlier, having that hard conversation kind of puts a wall up. Can you
Hmm.
talk us through maybe some ideas to break that down a little bit? Maybe just a, hey, how are you? What are some common things that you would suggest that would help that conversation into ease?
Sure, sure, absolutely. Yeah, and the point of that was with, especially for friends, family members, even coworkers, if you know someone either has a mental illness, you already know this, or you know that they've been through something traumatic, you know, saying, "Hey, I'm here for you. Just call me if you need something." It's a nice gesture and it may be extremely heartfelt. You may be waiting on the other end, but that person feels like they probably feel like they're a burden and they don't want to, go to someone and say, "Hey, I need to vent. I need help." They already feel bad enough about themselves to not put that on someone else. So absolutely, you reach out. Some ideas for that are just start the conversation and just go into it, not with the intention to fix someone, but just to listen and just to be there. They don't need you or want you to fix things. They don't. And there's there's probably nothing you could do to fix it anyways. So just go into it with the intention, I'm going to listen and I'm just going to be there. And that's it. So you can say, "Hey, I know you've been having a problem. I know you went through this. You know, I just want you to know I'm here for you and I want to know how you're doing. How are you doing?" Most people are going to say, "Oh, I'm good. I'm fine." Yeah, I know I know it can be hard, but I really see you. I really see you, and I just want to know honestly, what's going on? How are you? And if they keep pushing back, no, I'm good, no, I'm good, no, I'm good, then you may not be the right person for them to talk to, and that's okay, or it may not be the right time or place. So you kind of have to, again, go into it with the intention of listening and go with that. Um, but if you can get them to open up, then they'll tell you. They'll be, "Oh yeah, this is the way I feel. Da da da. Here's what I'm going through." And again, just listen and just be there. Another thing to not do that I've seen is very common, and I've done this myself, and I didn't realize when I was doing it how it was coming across. But, "Oh, are you okay? What's going on?" "Yeah, I'm feeling sad because, I lost my mother." "Oh, yeah, I lost my mother too." And da da da. We want to identify to kind of give that person some support, but that's probably not the right time. It's probably not the right time, you know. And if someone has depression and they're like, "Yeah, I have depression. I'm feeling like this," feeling like, "Oh yeah, I know how. Yeah, I've been sad too." So just again, just be very intentional about listening and not, use minimal reflection, which is, "Oh, I see. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh man, that sounds rough. That How is that affecting you?" Ask questions, pretend you're a reporter. Well, why is that happening? What's going on with that? You know, what what can I do for you? What do you need someone, this week? Do you want to go out to lunch? Look for those opportunities to be there. So again, it's listening and being there.
I
That
love
will
that.
that
I
will give
love
them
that. And
support.
not taking it, not because how many times we've heard someone say, "Well, what do you have to be depressed about? You've got this going on, or you're
Mhm,
successful in whatever your life situation might be." So I love that you're telling, take that step back and let that person just own who they are in that moment and listening.
mhm.
And Jamie, if you were to look back now from where you sit today to all that you've been through, what is the one thing that you would say was your hardest part to overcome and where you needed to give yourself the most grace?
That's a good question. The hardest part is just to not put today's feelings on tomorrow, because especially, with depression is not just "I'm sad because this is happening or that's happening." It's "I just feel like shit no matter what's happening, even with the good things that I have in my grasp. I just can't appreciate them. I can't enjoy them because of how bad I feel. And so you tend to think that it's always going to be that way, and it's not. And even if someone says that, oh, it's not always going to be that way, you're like, yeah, you don't know because you're not me. That's probably the most difficult thing I've ever experienced in my life, to the point of even beyond the suicide attempt at 18. There's been many times in my life where I've been in a depressive episode where I've thought, I just wish I wasn't here. You know, I didn't really have any plan for doing something, but there was many times where I just was like, I just wish I wasn't here. I just wish I could just lay down and go to sleep and not come back. It would be so much easier than dealing with this struggle. And that's the reality of depression. You feel that, you think that. So yeah, that's probably the hardest and worst thing about dealing with the mental illness like that.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your story with us and being here and being present. I know there are going to be listeners and viewers that connect with exactly what you've just shared, some of those internal feelings and struggles that they're going with. And so, as we wrap up today's episode, Jamie, I would like for you to share how our viewers and listeners can make contact with you. I know you've got several books out that are available. What are those books? How can we get our hands on them? How can we continue to support you while you support others?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so you can just go to my website, managingmentalhealth.net, and there's social media. So I would love for you to follow me on social media. I share quotes like you mentioned earlier. You know, try to have conversations that are really beneficial to people, and do kind of a mix of education and encouragement. Um, the Also on the same website, you'll find the links to my books. So there's all four that are out now, that are ebooks. So they're accessible anywhere in the world. And so there's managing anxiety, managing depression, managing PTSD, and managing adult ADHD. And all of them have enough education in them to help you understand what you're dealing with, but then rolls right into extremely practical strategies that you can put into place today to build long-term healing. And on the same site, same website's just my contact information in terms of email, or if you're interested in coaching.
I love it. Thank you, Jamie, again for your time today. And thank you to all our viewers and listeners for joining in on today's episode of Affirm That Shit. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. You just took another step towards owning your story and thriving against all odds. This is Affirm That Shit. Somehow I thrived. If you're ready to keep kicking ass, subscribe now, and let's keep breaking barriers together. Remember, life's a battle, but somehow you'll thrive.